Hi, welcome back, guys. This is your friend. Cinnamon Roll, what if with another fiction? What if Deku and Haruhi in a world of powers? They stand alone now. Before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. If you want more videos like this, now let's get into the fanfic. In a world, I can't believe he's forcing me to open with that line, where evil is the main course and justice is just the appetizer that the host forgot to thaw. People have abandoned hope as easily as a teenage mother who abandons her child in a dumpster. A narrator shouldn't be forced to say something so terrible. So I think it would be better to quickly introduce the heroine of our story. Her name is Eri, and despite being only a little girl, she is a magical girl who protects the weak with the power of gentle darkness. Next to her is her mentor Mikuru Asahina, a waitress who traveled back in time from the future. If you're wondering how and why a waitress from the future ended up mentoring a magical girl, well, there's no point in explaining, so I won't. You may also be wondering why Mikuru is dressed as a Playboy bunny. And if you're wondering why Eri isn't dressed up as a Playboy bunny as well, this movie isn't for you, so please leave. Anyway, Mikuru wasn't allowed to take any money with her from the future, so she has to work part-time at Kiyoshi Ward Mall to cover her bills. And such a provocative outfit is supposed to attract customers' attention to the store wherever she's working. Today, he is advertising an offer of cabbages at the local vegetable stall Sadara Delicious Vegetables, and little Eri does her best to help him, even accompanying her to her next job with the local butcher. You'd think that Mikuru being Eri's counselor would result in more than using loopholes to bypass child labor laws. But here we are. Also, it just occurred to me that I shouldn't have mentioned that last part. So let's make a cut and try to get back to the plot. We've managed to get back into the plot, but right now it has nothing to do with Eri or Mikuru. No, right now, we're focusing on that handsome young man named Itsuki Koizumi. Sure, he may just be innocently walking around the city at sunset, but unbeknownst to Itsuki himself, he's a powerful aspire whose psychic powers could very well decide the fate of the world. Normally, something this important would deserve to be well detailed in the story, but I guess some people thought that there wouldn't be enough time for something like that. Somehow. However, as I was saying, Itsuki's psychic powers could decide the fate of the world. And it is for that reason that Eri and Mikuru have been assigned to protect it. Again, this probably should have been discussed within the story. But hey, what a remedy. What we should be concerned about, however, is the fact that someone wants to use Itsuki's powers for their own evil, dastardly, and diabolical purposes. Wait, dastards? Who says that today? Anyway, let's move on to the next scene. Standing above a completely unfamiliar building that for legal reasons is certainly not the UA, stands a stoic girl wearing a witch's hat. The wind blows its cloak dramatically, but its lack of expression contrasts with it in such a way that it makes one think that the director was trying to force the drama of the scene, although it did not work. Anyway, this girl is Yuki Nagato, an alien witch who wants Itsuki to fulfill her own despicable who left the thesaurus open over there purposes. You'll probably think it's very strange that Yuki is an alien and a witch, just as you'll probably think it's very strange that she's standing there for no apparent reason, other than being in broad daylight, even though the last scene showed us everything at sunset. Well, editing is hard, especially when the director cares more about putting the scenes where they look cooler, rather than where they actually make sense, so we have to live with that. You, however, can do much better by purchasing your own editing software from Toshi Electronics. Computers, batteries, video games, and even refrigerators. They have appliances and gadgets at full throttle. So don't forget to stop by and see us for whatever you need. Anyway, let's move on to the next thing and leave this behind. We're back with Itsuki walking around the city without a care about anything. It's sunset again for some reason, but the clothes he's wearing are different. So I guess it's going to be a new day. And nothing important happened until then. Well, something important is definitely about to happen now, as Itsuki's ride has just come to a halt, as he finds himself being confronted by none other than Yuki in person. Who are you? Itsuki asks in a very artificial tone. My name is Yuki Nagato. Yuki replies. I'm an alien witch from another planet, and I've come here to kidnap you to destroy your civilization and begin my conquest of your entire galaxy. No way. Yes, it can be. Yuki then pulls out a wand to point it at Itsuki. It's certainly a mediocre-looking wand that looks like it was made for a child's craft project. But please accept the fact that it's supposed to be a powerful weapon built with the energy of a quasar, which means it's not the kind of thing you'd want pointed at you. Now, come with me without resistance, or I will be forced to use force to force you to come with me. NN not so fast. A stuttering voice interrupted the redundant malign speech, and the camera quickly and tremblingly swerves to the left to reveal that Eri and Mikuru apparently arrived at some point. Eri is wearing the same magical girl outfit and cane that we saw her before. If anyone has seen any magical girl shows, they have surely seen them, but Mikuru now wears an orange maid outfit instead of her bunny outfit that she wore before. Thank God for that. Who are you? Asks Itsuki, whose performance is definitely not improving and will not improve in the near future. Why I'm this. Eri put her hand to her face. I don't know why, but I'm sure it's not to read lines poorly written on your palm, I tell you. I'm the adorable fiery chaos warrior, Eri. I'm an avatar of the gentle darkness. What? Nissan, what does that mean? It means it's up to you to defeat her. And it's up to me to help you do it, Mikuru said. And no, I'm your counselor, so I say that's okay. And now, Yuki. P, get ready to be beaten. A catcher, Eri. Come get me, dog. Yes, Yuki was the one who said that. And yes, it sounded terrible, but please try to ignore it. Just focus on that fascinating battle, which consists simply of Yuki and Itsuki standing there, while Eri stares at them trembling like a leaf. Mikuru, who is not doing much better either, gives her a small tap on the back. And after standing for a while longer that for some reason had to be captured in this movie, Eri starts running towards Yuki with her eyes closed and shaking her magic staff like crazy. Naturally, he ends up hitting his head against a telephone pole. So this is where your powers go? Yuki asks. If that's the case, I don't have to worry about having to deal with you. We will continue this another time. Yuki turns around and walks away for reasons I don't understand. If Eri is really below her, why not kill her right there? That would save you a lot of trouble, wouldn't it? I don't think I'm crazy for thinking that. Are you all right? Itsuki asks Eri, her dialogue still sounding incredibly forced. Eri just nods her head and starts to shed some tears. By the way, who are the two of you, anyway? Oh, we're no one important. Just a couple of good Samaritans doing good deeds, Mikuru says. Before Itsuki could insist further with poorly acted lines, Mikuru simply picks up little Eri, who is still crying, and takes her into the sunset. But what a girl. Do you know what could have served Eri very well at that time? A gun. Wait, what? If she's just a girl, why would she? Why don't I tell you right now about the deals that are on the Gunther Weapon Models store right now? From revolvers to assault rifles, they have everything at half price for a limited time. And the products are so realistic that anyone can feel like an action star while holding one of them. That was a pain to say. Please, let's put it aside. We have already left it behind, thank goodness. Now we find our heroes by a definition of the word confronting Yuki once again in a park. It's clearly daytime, so it must be the day after the scene above. And somehow nothing major happened until now. Very well. So you've come to face me again, Eri? Yuki asks. Very well. This time, I will totally defeat you so that not even an atom of all is left. If I really could do that, it doesn't make sense that I didn't do it last time. Are they going to give us an explanation? Or will it be something they will ignore for all eternity? Probably the latter. This time it won't be like the last one. You evildoer, you, Eri said. Of course, because this time you will fight me, Mikuru said. You are clearly too strong for my disciple to take care of you. So for the sake of this world, I will face you instead. Wait, is she too strong for me? I think so. It's really hard to know. See, whatever, get ready for your last reckoning. No, Yuki said, because of course it was. However, Mikuru begins to move her hands and shoots beams of light at Yuki. To the untrained eye, those rays of light will probably look like poorly inserted digital effects, but I assure you that they are a lethal force worth fearing. Of course, that lethal force was ruined by how easily Yuki blocked them with her wand. But Mikuru deserves points for effort, right? My current tactics don't work, Mikuru said. I have no choice but, to use my secret technique. This is the kind of moment that is normally brimming with tension. But that's an impossible thing when Mikuru hasn't been fighting Yuki for more than 3 seconds before deciding that he'll use his secret technique. Anyway, Mikuru closes her eye, puts her fingers in a V shape on the side, and begins to stutter the phrase, Mikuru beam. As soon as the Mikuru beam is fired, Yuki runs towards Mikuru and knocks her down by pushing her to the ground. Eri panics, and a certain director starts giving very audible comments as we continue filming. It became too much, so I'll take this moment to talk about the Mikuru beam. The Mikuru beam is an incredibly powerful attack, but it's important to remember that it's incredibly fictional. Although we live in a world where people can shoot laser beams out of their eyes, that's not something you can do if your quirk has been established for a long time that grants you a completely different power. So if Mikuru does something like that, the real Mikuru, assuming there's a real Mikuru, won't be able to do that because the Mikuru beam isn't real. They'll probably think no one is foolish enough to need an explanation like that. But they'd be surprised. Why don't you think about it while we put all this behind us? I'm just as surprised by the change of scene as you are. The fight had barely begun, and apparently we're done with it already. As for the current scene, the three of them are in what appears to be a lake, and I think we're supposed to accept that this is where they're fighting instead of the park. Anyway, what's probably more important is the fact that Eri and Mikuru are being attacked by what appears to be a quartet of what look like zombies. Yuki is waving his wand like an orchestra conductor, so we can assume that he is controlling these people with his alien magic. Brains. 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 Murmurs one of the zombies, a blonde young man with eyes that look like they came straight out of an American cartoon. He's doing it even though literally none of the other zombies are doing it. And another of them, a girl dressed in what looks like a very elaborate outfit, even went out of character to scold him. I mean, he resisted Yuki's spell long enough to try to pull him out of it. Ha 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 ha. Oh my god, you are too much, Naira. Just pretend that this person is also capable of resisting zombification, to some extent. It really shows that underneath all of that, there is still some humanity underneath these people. And that's why Eri and Mikuru don't do anything to oppose them. The fact that they are so unwilling to hurt the innocent is admirable, even if it happens to the detriment of their own lives. And in effect it ends up being detrimental to their own lives, or at least to one of them. The zombified people grabbed Mikuru when she stood in front of Eri and threw her into the dirty depths of the lake. Please ignore that 2 of the zombies also fell with her, and how Nodoka, a person whose name I don't know, starts screaming saying that they ruined her suit. This is supposed to be a sad moment. Just look at Eri. Her supposed mentor has just sacrificed herself to protect her, and she couldn't do anything about it. It really pulls the strings of the heart, don't you think? We can't stay here. We need to give him medical attention. Was suddenly Itsuki's unnatural response, who was apparently already here, I guess. Where did it come from? He wasn't mentioned in the last few scenes, so it's very strange that he appears out of nowhere to get Mikuru out of the lake. And speaking of weird things, Yuki and the zombies seem to have disappeared. Are they gone yet? They were the ones with the upper hand, so why did they have to leave? Well, when you're in doubt, move on to the next scene, I guess. A sense of terror fills the whole air. Oh my god. Despite saying that Mikuru needed medical attention, Itsuki seems to have brought her and Eri to a place that would logically be their home. With a bitter expression, he lays her down on a mat. It is at this point that anyone can realize that Mikuru is only wearing a very large nightshirt for herself. But please pretend that it was Eri who wore it instead of something inappropriate for minors having happened. Is Ni-san going to get well? Eri asks. No. I already did everything I could. But it seems that the damage was too much, and it is irreparable. Itsuki said, still acting terrible. Eri. Mikuru's sleepy voice resounded, cutting through the artificial tension. Ni-san, Eri cried. I'll remember everything I've taught you about justice. We never saw any of that. I know that things are bad now, but only you have to believe in the power of friendship. Alone. Do that and you will find the light. Just as I'm about to. He coughs, and dies. Mikuru closed her eyes and was lifeless. For one, Eri started crying as much as one would expect a person in this kind of situation to do. Almost as if she was legitimately swept away by the feeling the scene was intended to achieve. Curse, Itsuki said, gently slamming his fist on the ground a second later. Why did this happen? What's happening? I would like to know too. I'll explain it to you. And out of nowhere, Yuki appears on Itsuki's windowsill. Is it magic, or because the film doesn't go at a consistent pace? You decide. Itsuki, you possess latent psychic powers capable of deciding the fate of the entire universe. I came to this planet to awaken those abilities and convince you to join me instead of this little girl. I understand that you have a very strong emotional attachment, but it's a fact that she and the people she's with are too unwary. Allowing them to be in charge of the fate of living things would be a mistake. And it would be much more beneficial to everyone if you allied yourself with a person who is able to think logically more often. There you have it. Yuki's raison d'etre. Those were just his lines, right? I'm not trying to go off script here. But he's not saying anything that's supposed to have any impact in real life, specifically about a certain narrator's relationship with a certain female director, right? No, I'm probably just thinking too much. I have to be. I see. What you're saying is that I'm a key capable of opening a door to something much bigger than me, Itsuki said. But a door is useless without the key. So if the key, that is I don't do anything, then the door will stay locked forever. I understand your point. But as we are, I don't see anything wrong with the way I do things. Is it because I think it will be for the best? Or am I just being selfish by not allowing myself to be open to other methods of operation? Difficult to say, seriously. What I do know, however, is that I'm not in a position to try something new. So for the time being, I must stay on the path I've set for myself. All right, that had to be metaphorical somehow. If that's your answer, so be it. I'll be back to get this over with, once and for all. It still doesn't make sense why you don't do it right now, but whatever. It's being dramatic or something, fine. The point is that Yuki just left the building, and as soon as she left, Eri, who strangely remained in total silence the entire time, adopted a determined expression on her face. I think you have work ahead of you, Eri, Itsuki said. Do you think you can handle it? I don't think I can handle it. I know I can handle it, Eri said. I'm glad to see someone believe in that. What follows now is a very bizarre sequence of events. Despite everything that just happened, Eri isn't doing anything to prepare for her fight against Yuki. Rather, all he's doing is having a good time and lounging around the city in many ways. He's eating apple pie at a bakery. He's shopping with an older man who seems to suffer from insomnia. She plays with another little girl and a cat, etc., etc. What happened to that thing that I had to fight Yuki? Is this my idea? Or is this all just a secondary assembly pile that they put in here just to meet regulation time? At least, that's how it feels. Eventually, it all came to an end. And Eri somehow ended up in a school that for legal reasons definitely can't be the UA standing in a classroom that is definitely not the one in class 1A. Eri found an envelope addressed to her. When she opened it, she discovered that there was a letter addressed to her, which read, "It's time to end this." "What's wrong, Eri? You have a very serious face in your eyes," said the blonde boy we saw earlier in the story. "It seems that he is no longer a zombie. I've never seen you like this. Did you see a news report about the GOP? Or is it that you have your first term or something? Why are you saying that to a girl?" "The hour destined for the destined judgment has arrived, Mirio," Eri said. "For the sake of justice, I must do what I can to confront it and defeat evil, just as Ni-san taught me." Mirio laughed when he heard that. Quite inappropriate, though not as inappropriate as their presence in general. The two seemed to be good friends, but how and why? It seemed like the lake incident was the first time they'd seen each other. But there's nothing to indicate that they even talked after that. Are we supposed to believe that they became friends off screen? This guy was partly responsible for Mikuru's death, so Eri shouldn't want to hang around him. Despite all that, I think we're about to put it behind us and move on to the next scene. Well, at least we're about to finish. Although the letter gave no indication of where Eri had to go, she miraculously found Yuki waiting for her on the rooftop. The wind was blowing, shaking his cloak just as dramatically as it had been in his first appearance, and for some reason, he now had a cat on his shoulders. "It's probably not important. It's time to end this, Yuki," Eri said. "For the sake of all mankind, and for the honor of my master, I will defeat you." "Shut your damn mouth, dwarf," Yuki said, for some reason. Seriously, doesn't anyone think of what this kind of scene would look like to an outsider? Anyway, the main thing here is that their fight has finally just begun. Eri fires the same cheap-looking but definitely powerful beams that Mikuru used before, but Yuki effortlessly blocks them all one after the other. He then approaches Eri and tries to hit her with his wand, but Eri manages to block each blow, even though she only seems to be waving her arms randomly. The two continue without stopping, even in the part where apparently a teacher comes to scold certain people for using fireworks. And it was very clear to everyone involved that the two were very evenly matched and at a standstill. Not bad for someone who had never fought before until this point. This is pathetic. Why do you keep dragging out this fight so long? You should have more than enough power to take down such a young girl. Stop holding back and finish it once and for all. All that dialogue came from all people from the cat, which, of course, has a perfectly logical explanation, one that will present itself at any moment. "I'm also a ventriloquist," Yuki said. There you have it. That is the answer. Why else would a cat that had never exhibited special abilities before be able to speak except for something like that? To think about anything else would be ridiculous, you know. The cat that I really am is right about something. It's time for him to use deadly force. Yuki then raised his wand and pointed it at Eri. A soft noise in the background and a low-cost flash effect filled the area as Eri began to shake off in pain. I know it doesn't really sound like much, but trust me when I tell you that that's really deadly magic. And no, I'm not going to give up, Eri said, slowly getting up from the ground. And no matter what kind of trouble I encounter, and I will never give up, because I'm the adorable fiery chaos warrior, Eri. With the power of friendship, probably, Eri resisted Yuki's attack and charged at her, waving her staff recklessly and violently. He tripped over one of his shoelaces and fell face first on the ground, but not before his cane grazed Yuki's leg. I said it grazed her. But in reality, Eri had put all her power into that attack, and when the staff made contact with Yuki, that power was released in the form of a fiery explosion capable of matching that of a nuclear bomb, demonstrated with a cheap cartoon effect. But please assume that the explosion was actually very powerful. You did it, Eri. You defeated Yuki and saved the world. With that kind of line so poorly spoken, it could only have been Itsuki appearing out of nowhere. One would think that he should already be involved in the climax in some way, but they hadn't even mentioned it. It feels like this whole story could have happened without him. I knew you could do it, Eri. Believe it or not. The one who just said that is Mikuru. She's in a wheelchair, so despite the implications of the last scene, it seems that she didn't actually die, but simply ended up paralyzed. How did that happen? And why did everyone act like they were dead if that wasn't the case? The smile on Eri's face showed that she was going to ignore all of this along with the blood from her nose from the fall, so it was probably best for this narrator to do the same. What really matters is that the day was saved thanks to Eri. Thank you, Eri. You are a true heroine and a good girl. This story is a fictional story. All names of characters, organizations, incidents, and any other names and phenomena, and as such are fictitious, too. Everything is invention. Even if he looks like someone, it's probably just a coincidence. Except for commercial ones. Please stop by to shop at Sadara Delicious Vegetables, Toshi Electronics, and the Gunther Gun Model Store for good deals. Stop by and buy something. Wait, what? Once again. This story is a work of fiction. All the characters, organizations, incidents, and all that blah blah blah. Izuku, why am I saying all this? Who would be so foolish as to believe that none of this could happen in real life? With that, the projector sputtered and the film came to an end. Midoriya maintained the same mixture of emotion that he had from the beginning of the screening. Shock, surprise, and indigestion. Judging by the faces of everyone in the room, it seems that everyone felt something along the same lines, with Nagato and Koizumi being two of the only exceptions. That was amazing, don't you think? Of course, Haruhi was the third exception. I told them we could do it. When the Sauce Brigade puts all its effort into it, nothing is impossible. I can't wait to see everyone's faces at the cultural festival. So are we really going to show people this? Midoriya asked. Of course. But how is everyone going to see that Eri-chan is the heroine we all need and deserve? Come to think of it, everyone in town will want to see it in action. So maybe we should charge for admission. I mean, surely for each performance we will have a full house. So it would be very well justified. Like someone is going to pay to see this shit. Bakugo said. Huh. You only say it because you don't show up. And why the hell is it like this? I spent 10 hours helping you and Deku with this crap, and you cut out all my scenes. A lot of things get lost in editing. That's how movies are, Bakugo. I can't think of anything to say to you, except to be a better actor next time. Again, considering the performance you gave us, you'll probably have to wait until your next life for that to bear fruit. With 1,000 demons. Bring the damn camera, and I'm going to show you what a real performance means. Right here and now. The two of them went on with the same thing for a while, and Midoriya needed all her willpower to sit still and not laugh. Anyway, the two of them were committed to helping someone other than themselves, so at least that would make it worthwhile. Or so he hoped. A long time ago, I learned that not all people are born equal. Our world is a world where most people are born with a superhuman ability called Quirk, and a large number of such people act as heroes to protect the innocent from danger. As if the reality of manga or comic books had become reality in real life. At present, 80% of the population owns some form of quirk, which naturally means that the other 20% do not. These people are considered the no quirks, and if you've been paying attention, you've already realized that that's the category I fall into. If there are about 7 billion people on the planet, that means that the number of people without quirk in the world is approximately 1,400 million people. On the surface, that sounds like a lot, doesn't it? About the number of people you could find in China or India. And those are the two countries with the highest populations in the world. The thing with those places, however, is that they have their $400 million condensed into one area. Imagine taking all the people in one of those countries and trying to break them up into more than 200 others that are scattered across 6 continents. And that without going on to the smaller islands or sovereign states. I don't know the exact math, but just thinking about it, It's very clear that every place has so few people without quirk that you could go a lifetime without knowing one. A person without a quirk has no powers, and yet their existence is the truly phantasmagorical one. And somehow I ended up being part of that rare species. I mentioned earlier that a large number of quirk users become heroes. But most people don't use their quirks for anything special and live normal, monotonous lives. There's nothing wrong with that because it's what they decide to do. But when you don't have quirk, it feels like you don't get a choice, like you have to live an ordinary life because you're inherently inferior to the rest. I don't believe in that way of thinking, though. Since I was a kid, I've always admired heroes like anyone else, maybe even more so, of course. I want to be one when I grow up. People always make fun of me for saying that, but I don't care. I have as much right to be a hero, to be someone who can save lives and reassure people with a smile, as anyone else in the world. So I'm not going to stop trying just because people tell me to. Still, that doesn't mean it's easy to deal with this, or anything like it. There is a limit to how strong a person can be in the face of adversity, and there are many days when it becomes too much to bear. I don't want to do anything else with my life, but I wish I didn't have to do it alone. I wish I met someone who was in the same boat as me, to meet another member of the spooky species that we are the ones who don't have quirk. Of course, as if that were going to happen to me. A normal day for Izuku Midoriya went like this. His little sister woke him up 10 minutes before his alarm went off. He and his mom cooked breakfast for 3 people, 4 on the rare occasions when his dad was home, watching the news waiting for some report about All Might doing anything heroic. He would go to school where Bakugo would pick him up before, during, and after school, and then he would leave for home as quickly as possible. That was the routine Midoriya had practiced for the past few years. It wasn't totally ideal, but nothing had ever happened to him that made him seem like he was going to change, so there was no benefit in bothering to try it in any way. That was what he thought for a long time, until one seemingly innocuous morning in May. Everything had gone according to his usual routine, from his little sister waking him up to Bakugo starting to tease him before class. But then his teacher surprised them with an announcement Midoriya hadn't heard in years. "We'll have a new student in the class today." The teacher brought the new student and revealed that she was a girl with long brown hair, with a yellow headband fastened with ribbons on both sides. Most of the class, especially the boys, began to buzz with excitement, but Midoriya didn't feel that way. Objectively, the girl might be cute, but every time a new student arrived, it wasn't long before she jumped into the "let's screw Midoriya" bandwagon. So he wasn't exactly excited about having to deal with another tormentor. "All right, introduce yourself to the class and tell us 3 interesting things about yourself," said the professor. "Only 3. A bit arbitrary, but okay," said the girl. "My name is Haruhi Suzumiya. My family just moved here from Nishinomiya, and I hope we can get along. I like to play the piano. My favorite heroine is Mirko. And what else? Oh, yes, I don't have a quirk." Midoriya almost went back with everything and a seat, and he was not the only one. The looks on everyone's faces made it clear that they had no idea how to process what he had just said. Even the professor seemed to have frozen. Seeing more than one person without a quirk in your life was a rarity on its own. But for someone to so blatantly declare themselves to be quirk was something else entirely. And she did it all the time with a smile on her face. And for various reasons, Midoriya couldn't take her eyes off that smile. The idea that Midoriya wasn't able to take her eyes off Haruhi wasn't a mere exaggeration, as it turned out to be. All the lessons of the day went in one ear and out the other. It was hard to maintain interest in long divisions when you finally meet someone like you after 7 years of being totally alone. His observations, as thorough as they were, didn't tell him much about her, however. From what I could see, Haruhi was just a normal girl who answered questions like any other girl and laughed like any other girl. Maybe that's partly why the other girls in the class started to like her despite not having a quirk. Even if Haruhi was basically an endangered specimen, the fact that she was attractive and well-styled meant that she would be worth getting along with. It almost made Midoriya wish she had been born a girl. I'm telling you, boast, for a girl without a quirk, you seem to be a great fit. Midoriya slumped into her chair as she watched Bakugo stomp on Haruhi and the girls he was chatting with during his lunch break. Thank you, I guess, whoever you are, Haruhi said. That's Bakugo. He's the toughest kid in the whole class, and he'd be the coolest if it weren't for his attitude, said one of the girls. I could swear I wasn't talking to you, Bakugo said, before turning his attention to Haruhi. Like I said, for a girl without a quirk, you surprisingly aren't pathetic or unpleasant to look at. You're much better than Deku, that's for sure. Deku. The guy who's been staring at me all day? Haruhi asked. The girls let out a chorus of oohs as Midoriya sank deeper into her seat. He doesn't have a quirk either. Yes, but he's nowhere near as cool as you, Haruhi. It's like you're a filet mignon and he's a piece of beef jerky or something, said one of the girls, causing Bakugo and the rest of the group to laugh. I actually like both. Well, then you'll probably love hanging out with Deku. They would get along as well as 2 drops of water without quirk. Everyone laughed again. Midoriya didn't know if there really was a god. But anyway, she was praying that Haruhi wouldn't take the bait and stay with her little group of girls. I'm not sure about that, but I may as well stop by to say hello. He should never have had any doubts that his prayers would never be answered. And yet Midoriya was surprised. With no regard for him, Haruhi walked over to where he stood and sat down at the desk right next to his. Well, shall I dare to guess and say that Deku is not your real name? And no, Midoriya said. My name is Izuku Midoriya. Deku is just a nickname. Why if you want to call me that? No, Midoriya sounds better if you ask me, Haruhi said with a smile. Midoriya did not dislike the feeling that this provoked in him. You've probably heard, but I realized you were watching me pretty much from the beginning. And it wasn't my intention. It's just that I've never met another person without quirk before, so. Hey, okay. Rejoice over this. If I had found out you didn't have quirk otherwise, I might not have bothered to come talk to you. Somehow, Midoriya began to feel worse about himself. Really? Why do you say that? Just take a look at that chicken coop over there. Haruhi pointed to Bakugo and the girls he was talking to up to that moment. They kept looking at both of them, and every time they did, they laughed. They probably think it would be quite a fuss if the only 2 of them without quirk in the class became friends. Like hanging out together doubles the material for their comedy routine or something. If I knew from the beginning that you didn't have quirk, then I wouldn't have talked to you because they would surely expect me to talk to you. And why should I do anything just because people expect it to happen? And that's not what you're doing right now. No, it's different. In my scenario, no one directly tells me to talk to you, and it's just the general atmosphere that expects the 2 of us to connect. Here, everyone makes their intentions very clear from the start, which means there's an open dialogue about how we should get to know each other, just because we don't have quirk. Yet everyone expects us to talk because we don't have quirk. But if I didn't talk to you, they'd start making jokes just because I refuse to talk to someone who's like me, saying things like, don't walk around thinking you're better than you really are, or something like that. Either way, you'd end up being a laughingstock in someone else's jokes, and you'd end up caught in the crossfire. It makes sense. I suppose so, Midoriya said, with only a moderate amount of sincerity in her words. So if it was a lose-lose situation anyway, why did you choose this option? Well, the truth is that I did want to talk to you, so it was the lesser of the 2 evils. Haruhi smiled at him again, and Midoriya suddenly had a vague idea of the kind of feeling it inspired. Genuine camaraderie. Midoriya didn't remember what things she ended up talking to Haruhi, but she did know that it was quite a lot and ended up spending the rest of the day. Just as Haruhi predicted, most of the class was paying attention to the fact that they were talking to each other. But that felt more manageable than the usual teasing she had to deal with. Just as Midoriya predicted, Haruhi was still a very normal girl, but the fact that she talked to him about all the people was already a miracle in itself. So she wasn't going to complain. The next day, Midoriya and Haruhi met at lunchtime to talk about a little bit of everything. Midoriya was slightly delayed due to Bakugo again, taking a chance to mess with him for any reason. And by the time he reached his place next to Haruhi, Haruhi raised one of her eyebrows curiously. You know, for someone who is supposed to be your friend, Bakugo really treats you like garbage, Haruhi said. And I know, Suzumiya-san, but it's more complicated than that, Midoriya said. What? Is it some kind of S&M game? Naturally, Midoriya spat out all of her food on top of her desk. No, it's not about that. Not at all. Yes, I know. Although that reaction was priceless. Midoriya didn't like that smile as much as the others. Look, I know that Kaken is a jerk sometimes, but we have known each other since we were little, so I know very well beyond that. He is a very strong person who always achieves everything he sets his mind to. I've never been good at anything, so I can't help but admire him for that. That sounds like one of those macho male things that my lack of a Y chromosome apparently prevents me from understanding, Haruhi said. Is it? I don't really know much about those things, to be honest, Midoriya said. Well, maybe it's one of those things like when hate turns to love. Or I guess when love turns to hate, and then love again. I don't know. The truth is that I have no experience with this kind of thing. To have friends, with having bullies. Now it was Midoriya's turn to raise an eyebrow. Most, if not all, of them here have been picking on you since you were diagnosed as having no quirk, right? Well, I never had to deal with any of that. Never? I mean, there was always the occasional bully who thought it would be fun to tease the girl without quirk. But other than that, most people have left me alone. I don't know why, though. If Midoriya had to guess, he'd say maybe the fact that she was an objectively cute girl displaced the fact that she didn't have a quirk. But for various reasons he kept that to himself. I wish I had that kind of luck. I think it was less a matter of luck and more of making the right decisions in life. Now that you've got me around, you're probably not going to take any wrong ones anytime soon. So you should be glad about that. Why, yes, I guess. Despite the hesitation in his voice, he was happy to hear that. Midoriya and Haruhi continued to have talks like that at every lunch period for the rest of the week. For the first time in her entire life, Midoriya's routine was broken, although only slightly. They never talked about heavy or existential topics, just normal things like school, their families, and who would win in a wrestling match between All Might and Mirko. It was just normal teenage stuff, nothing to get excited about. But in Midoriya's defense, he couldn't remember when was the last time he had something like that. Again, Suzumiya-san, All Might completely outnumbers Mirko in brute strength, so there's no way I can beat him, Midoriya said. Yes, but its smaller size should give it an edge, shouldn't it? Not to mention, mud makes things slippery, Haruhi said. But that would make things difficult for both Mirko and All Might, wouldn't it? Also, when did this become a meeting of struggles in the mud? When I realized how great it would be to see those two struggling with each other covered in mud. Don't tell me you've never imagined it, at least for Mirko. I can't say yes. Haven't you done it, or do you not want to? One or the other, I suppose? Midoriya asked with a shrug. When he glanced at the clock, he saw that lunch was almost over, and since it was Saturday noon, school would end along with him. Suzumiya-san, do you have any plans for the weekend? Why do you ask? Are you going to feel lonely for not seeing me for a day and a half? Haruhi asked with a big smile. Why, I was just curious, that's all. Well, if you really need to know, my parents are going to take me to an after-school baseball game today. It will be the first time I've been to one, so I'm pretty excited. The smile on his face left no room for doubt. You know, my aunt was supposed to come with us, but she got the flu and won't be able to make it. We have an extra ticket, so, if you're not busy with anything. Haruhi was interrupted by Bakugo. who stamped both hands on their desks. You're definitely getting very friendly with the Lucidos, huh, Deku? Tell me something. Do quirks less like you have some kind of animal magnetism? Bakugo asked. K. Kaken, that's not. I don't know what. Obviously not. I mean, you're the biggest animal here, and none of us feel like hanging out with you. Haruhi said. What the hell did you just say? Bakugo shouted. A few watching laughed lightly at Haruhi's comment, and it took great willpower for Midoriya not to do so as well. Okay, as funny as it is to see someone dare to reply to Bakugo, you've already spent a lot of time with Deku, said one of the girls in the class. Yes, it was fun at first, but you should know that getting too close to that loser will hurt you in the long run, added another. Who says it? You? You're telling me to stop hanging out with Midoriya just because you guys are already bored of laughing at us behind our backs. So how much are your words really worth anyway? Haruhi asked them. Apologize. Where do you think you're getting off, little one? And that's enough. Suzumiya-san hasn't done anything to them, so leave her alone, Midoriya said. It was not for him to express his emotions so strongly, but he could not sleep that night if he let Haruhi face them alone. You finally grew some guts, didn't you? I guess it's easy for you to play tough when you have a chance to play the hero. It's the only way a loser without a quirk like you could be won anyway, Bakugo said. My dream has nothing to do with this, Kaken. It's just that I don't think any of you should make fun of Suzumiya-san when all she's doing is. Are you stupid or what? Haruhi interceded. Midoriya turned to look at her with a look of confusion, which was shared by the rest of those still in the classroom. Suzumiya-san? What you were talking about just now. Did you say you wanted to be a hero? Even though you don't have a quirk? Why, yes. What about that? Haruhi sighed and put a hand on his face. Are you kidding me? No wonder everyone makes fun of you if you talk about such stupid things all the time. And for the first time in a while, everyone started laughing at Midoriya. My dream of being a hero isn't stupid. Yes, it is when you don't have a quirk. Heroes and villains alike rip entire buildings off the ground every week like there's no tomorrow. And do you really think you can keep up with them without having a quirk of your own? Don't you think you should be smarter than that at this stage of your life? More laughter from his teammates. And I'm no idiot. You could have fooled me, Bakugo interjected. Why, I know that becoming a hero without having a quirk is basically impossible. But does that mean I shouldn't try? I want to be a hero as much as Kaken or the others. Don't I also have the right to try? Just because you have the right to something doesn't mean you should act on it, you know, Haruhi said. If you really want to help people so badly, try to become a doctor, firefighter, police officer, or something like that. Those people save lives just as much as the heroes, and they're just as respected in the community. It's not the same. All those people are very limited in what they can do to help. But a hero can take action wherever he wants and save hundreds of people because of that. That's why I want to be a hero, to save as many people as I can and put a smile on their faces, just like All Might. Yes, just like All Might, the peace symbol that also has a quirk. Are you listening to yourself to realize how little sense you say? With you, it's always All Might this and All Might that. But I bet if he were here right now, I'd tell you to abandon him like everyone else. There had to be more laughter from Bakugo and the rest of the class. But Midoriya didn't hear it. Haruhi's words were soft, and yet they felt with the force of a gun straight to his ears. That being so, he became totally deaf to the world, even as Bakugo stood in front of his face, saying things that were undoubtedly more mockery focused on what he had just sweated. Haruhi stood up and left the room, not bothering to look at him again. Just like that, he was back to where he started. Thanks to that low blow to his morale, the weekend became eternal for Midoriya, and all he did was do his routine moves with as little effort as possible. When Monday came, he didn't even resist when his little sister woke him up too early. When he arrived at school, He barely reacted to Bakugu's pre-class bravado. Things had returned to normal, but none of that seemed to matter now. A few minutes before class started, the door opened again. Midoriya barely turned to look at her instinctively, and to her chagrin, or perhaps disappointment, Haruhi was the one who entered. This time his eyes didn't focus on her as much as in the past days, but enough to realize that she was no longer smiling as she had said since the day she transferred. If there was a single emotion to describe her face, Midoriya would have chosen melancholy. Still reeling from the aftermath of what happened last week, Midoriya didn't accompany Haruhi to lunch, though she didn't seem to be in the mood for that either. Haruhi stayed with that melancholy look on her face all day, not bothering to say a single word. She didn't even take out anything to eat at lunchtime. She just sat there staring blankly into space. It was a very strange thing to see, but Midoriya didn't have the courage to intervene. Eventually, the day came to an end. Midoriya gathered her things and began to head for the door. Out of the corner of the eye, he saw Haruhi getting up, but his books and pencils were scattered on his desk. Not only that, but he didn't head towards the door, opting to walk towards where Bakugo and his gang were, who were very comfortable in the back of the hall. Midoriya thought it would be best to see where all this would go. "What do you want, Lechitos?" Bakugo asked. Haruhi didn't say anything to her. "What's wrong with you? Do you think you can come here to hang out with me while you and Deku are fighting? I've got better things to do than entertain your ass without Quirk. So don't just stand there and spit out what?" Without a single drop of provocation, Haruhi punched Bakugo all over the face, sending him flying against a shelf of books. Midoriya didn't know which was louder, the sound of Bakugo's impact, or the collective noise of everyone's jaws falling. "Why the hell did you do that?" "Emotional catharsis, that's why," Haruhi said. "Do you want more? Because I'll gladly give you more. I'm going to kill you, you fucking dog." Bakugo jumped on Haruhi, his blast quirk at full power. He barely managed to touch it, and from there, the two let loose in a storm of punches that blew everything that crossed their path in the classroom. It was the most ridiculous thing Midoriya had ever seen in her entire life, and yet she couldn't take her eyes off her. Fortunately, or unfortunately, her teacher quickly showed up to break up the fight. And it was then that Midoriya was able to allow herself to think about how she had no idea what had just happened. Midoriya was still upset with Haruhi. He still didn't want to talk to her, didn't know how to approach her, and yet found himself waiting for her after school while the principal was lecturing her. It would take only an hour off his day, but he had to. "What a surprise to see you here. And I thought you would have gone home by now," Haruhi said the second he stepped out of the school. "And I know, but—" "Hey, where are your parents?" Midoriya asked, quickly diverting the subject. The director wanted to talk to them and Bakugo's mom a bit more privately, so they told me to wait for them in the car. Your parents were angry. Oh yes, they even became livid. Although Bakugo's mother seems to have taken it much better. According to her, I did something good when I hit her all over the face. I'm glad to have someone's approval at least. Lu punched Kaken in the face. How many people did you think would be okay with that? I have no idea. You at least, probably. Midoriya took a quick breath. Come on, he was looking for it. Don't tell me that at least you weren't a little happy to see that. For all that you put Bakugo on a pedestal, it must have been incredible to see someone pull him for a change, don't you think? Midoriya didn't want to do anything in response, but despite her instinct, she ended up nodding her head weakly. Still, why did you do that, Suzumiya-san? Where did it come from? Perhaps. Has something happened since we spoke last time? Haruhi's expression turned somber, magnifying his melancholy. Midoriya, have you ever thought about how insignificant we all are in the big picture of things? I have started to do it, was all Haruhi said in a single breath. What do you mean? Was all Midoriya could say in response. Remember that baseball game I told you about? When we arrived at the stadium, I was surprised to see that it was packed with more people than I had ever seen in one place. I could barely take a step without bumping into someone, and the people on the other side of the stands looked like grains of rice from where I was sitting. I asked my dad how many people there would be in the stadium, and he told me that since all the tickets were sold, it must be at least 50,000. Until that moment, I never imagined that there could be so many people in one place. When I got home, I took out the calculator to do some math. I remember once reading that the population of Japan was about 100 million. So I divided that by 50,000. And you know how much it gave me? 2,000. That stadium was filled to capacity with hundreds of people. And yet it was only about a couple of thousandths of all the people in the country. If that was the fraction of a fraction, then that would mean that I, being a mere person, am only a fraction of another fraction. A brief breeze passed by them, stroking Haruhi's hair, and it only served to emphasize the weight of his words. It was at that moment that I finally understood. I am not, nor have I ever been, someone special. I used to think that everything I did in my life was unique and made me my own person, from the way I tie my ties to the way I get excited every time Mirko was on the news. But I was wrong. If there are so many people in the world that full stadium is nothing more than a tiny statistic, then the things that I thought were unique to me are probably made exactly the same by someone else, and that someone must think that they also make it special. Another breeze passed through Haruhi's hair. Midoriya stood there in silence. She didn't know enough about the world to let her know any philosophy that might be of use to her, and she couldn't think of words to comfort her that weren't going to be interpreted as feeling sorry for her. I didn't know what I could do to help her, but I did know I wanted to do it, if only to take that melancholy look off her face. However, after a few seconds, Haruhi's melancholy look was replaced by one of frustration. It really makes me angry just thinking about it. There are 7 billion people on this planet, so not all of them must be useless, right? There must be at least a few interesting people in the world. So why wasn't I born one of them? Why, Midoriya, why? Haruhi said his words as he stomped the ground with the speed and precision of a hydraulic hammer. And I don't know. I'm just a nobody too, so. Yes, you are a nobody. You're as boring and unfunny as anyone else. If you were to open a dictionary and look up the word softy, you would surely find a great photo of yourself next to it. If that was Haruhi's attempt to cheer herself up, he would have wanted to suggest something else. That fits you like a glove, but do you know what distinguishes you from the other nobodies? That you are at least trying to do something about it. You can't live as an ordinary guy for the rest of your life, so you try to become a hero. After all, there's no one more interesting than heroes, right? And to think that I thought you were an idiot for wanting to be. Rather, I'm the idiot for making fun of you for that. If that was an apology, then Midoriya would gladly accept it. More importantly, Midoriya couldn't help but feel that Haruhi was both right and wrong in her assessment of him. Midoriya really wanted to be a hero to help people, but he would be lying if he said that a part of him didn't want to go into it for glory, that a part of him didn't want to become a person that everyone admired. There could be nothing wrong with that. He had spent more than half his life dealing with people who made him feel worthless. So a part of him wanted others to see him as someone important. Midoriya kept all that to himself. He was too distracted by Haruhi holding out his hand and with a big smile on his face, wider than the previous ones he had seen him, although there was a slight hint of despair in his eyes. Let's do it, Midoriya. You and I, we're going to teach everyone that we do matter. Let everyone in the universe know that we are here. We're going to make them the biggest, coolest, and most interesting heroes in the world. And if we don't have quirks. What do you think about that? Why, yes. Yes. Yes, let's do it. It was as if a wave of pure charisma shot out of Haruhi and down on him. A part of him may have just gone with the flow, but Midoriya knew that his whole being wanted to be on the same page as her, no matter if he was the one taking full control of the conversation. There wasn't a part of him that didn't want the same thing Haruhi wanted. So he wasn't surprised at all when he found himself shaking his hand with all his enthusiasm. There is a limit to how strong a person can be in the face of adversity. And there are many days when it becomes too much to bear. I don't want to do anything else with my life, but I wish I didn't have to do it alone. I wish I met someone who was in the same boat as me. To meet another member of the spooky species that we are the ones who don't have quirk. When I was in 6th grade, on a day I would never forget, my wish was granted in the form of Haruhi Suzumiya, a person I would never forget. And after a stumble or two, we both decided that we would support each other on our path to becoming heroes without quirks. Little did I know that things were going to get a lot more complicated than anyone could have imagined for many, many reasons. Up to this point, the general framework of my story with Haruhi should already be very clear. The boy knows the girl. The girl destroys the boy's hopes and dreams. The girl beats up the boy's friend. The boy and the girl decide to work together to become heroes, even though they both lack quirk. Put into words, it sounds almost like something out of a movie. Haruhi's parents ended up in the principal's office for a long time. So as much as I would have wanted to meet them, with how late it was getting, I decided to go home. My mom and little sister wanted to know why I was so late, but I just told them I was hanging out with someone, which wasn't a complete lie if you thought about it. They both assumed I was talking about Kanken, but I didn't bother correcting them. He was too busy thinking about what Haruhi had just done and what he would do tomorrow. I thought of many things that occurred to me about what Haruhi would do the next day, but in the end it turned out that they were all wrong. Kaken went after me the second I set foot in the class, but Haruhi, moving as if he had X rank in presence concealment, was already there to stop him before things got ugly. As soon as the situation calmed down, however, Haruhi basically reignited the flames by announcing in front of the entire class that the two of us would become great heroes despite not having quirk, and that anyone who had a problem with that could. Well, that's not the kind of language I'm supposed to use in front of my sister, so I'm not going to repeat it. Suffice it to say that Haruhi didn't go to see any of the girls in the class that day. Every break between classes came straight at me, and lunch was the same. We generally kept talking about the same mundane things, but every time we saw each other, Haruhi told me that we couldn't let anyone think we were just words. We had to prove to everyone that we could become heroes even without quirk, and she had a master plan to do so. I asked her what it was, and she just told me not to worry and to leave everything up to her, which probably meant she hadn't actually come up with anything yet. With all that, we made plans to meet on Sunday and do whatever she could think of until then, if anything. It was all very strange, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't at least a little excited. One Sunday at the beginning of May, Midoriya, for once in her life, got up early. So early that he stepped on the cold floor of his room the second his little sister went into his room to wake him up. The look on his face was worthy of admiration, but the memory of his face was going to keep the admiration. I had a great day ahead of me, I had assumed. Today was the day he and Haruhi were going to start their journey to becoming heroes without quirk. To be honest, Midoriya still had no idea what, if anything, Haruhi would have come up with. When I asked him about it over the course of the week, he said it was a secret, which made him think he was just telling him that he had a plan to cover up the fact that he didn't have any. However, as Midoriya put on her jeans and t-shirt with the word wife beater written on it, she realized that was okay with her. Hanging out with Haruhi, or whoever it was, really on the weekend was something worth waiting for. So even if it wasn't serious, I could have a good time. Wow, you look very happy today, Izuku, his mother told him. Before she knew it, she was at the kitchen table eating breakfast with her and her little sister. Do you really? I mean, do I really look so happy that it's worth talking about? Midoriya asked. Yes, it looks like you were on fire, Deku-kun, and I didn't even have to hit you again with my quirk, Midoriya's little sister said, simultaneously giving her a rather recent and painful reminder. You've been very happy for a while, but never like this. What happened to you? Is it so crazy that he is happy? Midoriya thought. Well, I'm actually going out with someone today. Is Kakin coming to visit? Yay. Her little sister practically jumped out of her chair. And I didn't say that. I'm glad to hear that, Izuku. You and Kakin don't play outside of school often anymore. It's nice to know that you're still good friends. Inko said. It's not that we're not friends, but I never said that. Mom, can I let Kakin hit me in the face when he arrives? Added Midoriya's little sister. They will have to do it outside, and only if you finish eating everything on your plate. Inko said. Again, I'm trying to tell you that. Midoriya was interrupted by the doorbell. He immediately offered to answer. If her family wasn't going to listen to her, she didn't have to spend so much time with her. Even if it was just a salesperson or a fundraiser for the NHK subscription fee, which they had already paid for that month anyway, they would at least serve to talk. Good morning, world, greeted the person at the door to Midoriya. Too energetic to be a salesman or collector. It took Midoriya just a second to see that it was Haruhi dressed in jean shorts and an orange t-shirt with a panda logo on the chest. Suzumiya-san, what are you doing here? Midoriya asked. What do you mean? We agreed that today we were going to meet at your house, Haruhi said. We agree at noon. It's barely 9:30. Well, I was bored, so sue me. There were a lot of things Midoriya would want to do, but that was way down on her list. Izuku, who are you talking to? Without him noticing, Inko had already reached the entrance of the apartment, and her little sister was following her very closely. Can we help you, miss? My name is Haruhi Suzumiya, and I have come to take possession of your son for today, Miss Midoriya, Haruhi said. Why she chose those words, Midoriya had no idea. You came for what? Wait, are you the one Izuku is going to play with today? You mean that Deku-kun has friends who are not Kakin? Added the little sister. That's what I've been trying to tell you too. Seriously, is he so crazy that he's going to hang out with anyone other than Kakin? Midoriya asked. All of them, including Haruhi, nodded their heads. In hindsight, he walked very easily into that trap. Bakugo is already old news, lady and adorable girl. Haruhi said. I'm like new Coke, a new flavor that will make you forget about the old brand. Wasn't that the opposite of what happened with new Coke? Midoriya thought. Also, please don't refer to what we're going to do as going out to play. After all, your son and I are about to embark on some very serious training to become heroes without Quirk. Are they going to do what? Midoriya couldn't read the look on her mother's face well, but it certainly wasn't one of happiness. People were already talking about what they thought of him being a hero, so it made sense to her. Deku-kun, can I go with you and Suzumiya-san? I can exploit them if it helps them in any way, said the little sister. I'm sorry, little one. This is a private training session between your brother and me. But when we're done, I'll come back here and play with you all night if you want. And besides, Suzumiya-san doesn't sound great. You can just call me Haruhi, she said while rubbing her little sister's emerald locks with her hand. Yay, Haruhi, you're almost as cool as Kakin. Probably, but I don't intend to lower my reputation any further. Anyway, Midoriya interjected. Like I was saying, you came too early. We can start by seeing that you're already here. But I have to help my mom clean the... No, don't worry about it. You can leave with your friend, Inko said very hurriedly. Really? Well. And with that, Midoriya quickly went to her room to get her wallet, put on her red shoes, and left the apartment next to Haruhi, while her little sister said goodbye to them with great enthusiasm. Your family seems very nice, Haruhi said as Midoriya closed the door behind her. Especially your little sister. God, but how beautiful. I would get 15 on the scale of 1 to 10 of younger sisters, if it were not for Bakugo's blind admiration. Midoriya, what would that supposed scale of younger sisters be measuring? It is not blind admiration. Kaken actually gets along very well with my little sister, Midoriya said, and then added, much better than me, under her breath. He treats her like the younger sister he never had, probably because they have very similar quirks. Really? What does she do? Well, my mom has telekinesis and my dad breathes fire. So those combinations gave him a very specialized form of pyrokinesis. The way it works, she absorbs the kinetic energy of anything that hits her, simultaneously reducing the damage to virtually nothing. And when she accumulates enough, she releases it in the form of a great explosion of fire. That's great. So that's what he meant when he said he could blow us up. Come to think of it, something like that could be very beneficial for our training. Please don't. My feelings about my little sister using me as a dumbbell aside, she still doesn't have very good control over her quirk. Didn't you notice that the door to our apartment looks completely different than all the others in the complex? Now that you say it, I guess it would be strange if it would be fashionable, at least with that painting. But you know what? We can go house hunting later. Because today begins the first day of the rest of our lives. Haruhi raised his fist very enthusiastically in the air. Why, yes. Midoriya raised her fist in the air, with comparatively less enthusiasm. At least it was good to know that they had a plan. But the fact that I still had no idea what it would be was still less than ideal. Since the whole operation was Haruhi's idea, she was naturally the guide. He escorted Midoriya to the train station, where they took the first 1 and 2 stops before getting off at Koyon Station. From there, she grabbed him by the wrist, an act that left Midoriya like a tomato, and pulled him through the crowd of people until they reached a mostly empty park. Midoriya noticed that for someone who had only been living in Misutafu for a couple of weeks, Haruhi exhibited a great familiarity with that part of the city. He suspected that he had taken him to his neighborhood, but he did not ask questions about it. He was too busy thinking about what Haruhi had planned for them. All right, where did I put it? Haruhi wondered as she searched through some bushes. I think he was. Ah, here it is. Haruhi jumped out of the bushes and placed in front of him a huge box filled with what appeared to be trash of all kinds. Suzumiya-san, what is this? Midoriya asked. A bag of junk. He was almost right. And what is it for? Simple. You're going to build something. Haruhi seemed very proud of herself when she said that. But Midoriya couldn't think of a reason for it. See, build something? What do you mean? What do you hope he will build with this? Whatever you want. Think of yourself as Da Vinci, and that this box is your canvas, and turn it into whatever you want. Although you should try something that can fly and shoot laser beams. There were many forms of protest that Midoriya wanted to offer for many obvious reasons, but the look Haruhi was giving her made it clear that they weren't going to work. Not knowing what else to do, Midoriya began to dig through the cardboard box. It was certainly filled with things like batteries, magnets, circuit boards, power cords, and assorted pieces of metal. As for tools, there was a hammer, a box of nails, a tube of Gorilla Glue, a roll of duct tape, and a blowtorch. It didn't take the genius Haruhi expected Midoriya to be to see that she had a very limited understanding of what it took to create technology. Almost immediately, Midoriya put the blowtorch aside. He didn't care what Haruhi had to say, which thankfully was nothing that was too dangerous to use. That said, Midoriya had no idea what she was supposed to do with the other tools just because they were safer to use, so she started doing random things. The pieces of assorted metal were the only things that looked safe enough to nail, but they were too thick to be pierced with the nails, so the hammer quickly became useless. As useless as they were in the practical sense, glue and duct tape ended up being the only tools I wanted and could use. So he spent the next 20 minutes or so gluing everything he found in various ways until he ended up with what might be an artist's abstract interpretation of the shape of a robot. A gentle breeze blew, and the monstrosity collapsed in all joints. Seriously, what did you expect me to do? Midoriya asked. I know I get good grades and I like to take notes on heroes, But I'm not a super genius or anything like that. Yes, I already imagined that something like this would end, Haruhi said as she threw the trash back into the box. Did you already know? Of course, like you said. Just because you're smarter than some of your peers doesn't mean you're a super genius. I'm glad you saw a lot of crap and couldn't make something super cool out of it. After all, if you were smart enough to make the kind of gadgets and toys that subjects like Batman or Iron Man use to fight, it would be very hard to say that you're going to be a hero who doesn't have powers. That kind of intelligence would make anyone superhuman. So to declare that you don't have Quirk when you also have that at your disposal is to be lazy, you know? Guess. Maybe. Wait. If you didn't want me to be able to invent something out of garbage, then why did you put me through that? Because I wanted to be sure, obviously. You don't want to spend the rest of your life wondering what could have been, do you? Haruhi was the only one who had those kinds of thoughts. But Midoriya decided to keep that obvious fact to himself. Now that that's out of the way, we can start with the real master plan. If we stick to this, we can become heroes in no time. And what is that plan? Haruhi paused, looking like he's listening to a roll of imaginary drums. With all the expectation, it would have to be a good thing. The plan will be for us to do 100 push-ups, 100 squats, 100 sit-ups, and run 10 kilometers every day. There were no words. Any attempt on Midoriya's part to remove them failed miserably. You were speechless, huh? I'm not surprised. It's a great plan, even if I say so myself. Suzumiya-san, is your plan just to copy something out of a manga? Were Midoriya's words once he regained his speech? Of course not. Midoriya breathed a sigh of relief. We're going to skip the parts of not using air conditioning and eating only a banana for breakfast. The last thing I need is to become a bald girl at 14 after all. The sigh was sucked back inside. Suzumiya-san, that's completely ridiculous. Are you going to tell me with a straight face that that's what we should be doing? I thought we were both going to take this seriously. Hey, I'm taking this as seriously as you are. Since we don't have quirks, we have to at least develop and strengthen our bodies to beat up the villains. So why not try something that those people on YouTube have proven to work? Besides, it's not like you have thought of something. Haruhi puffed up his cheeks at his last comment. And as the image stuck in his memory, Midoriya conceded that he was right. Perhaps Haruhi's idea was too stupid for her liking. But between the two of them, she was the only one who at least had an idea. So she couldn't complain. You are right. I am sorry. You should feel it. I know I'm just copying someone else, but it took me a while to think about this. As he spoke, Haruhi removed the headband from his head and tied it behind his head to make a ponytail. Let's do it. For reasons that Midoriya was still too young to understand, such an image filled him with a great deal of energy. Haruhi's Spartan-style training proved to be as aggravating as Midoriya feared it would be. To his great surprise, the push-ups did not totally destroy him in his effort to complete them. But he did begin to feel a noticeable pain in the middle of his abdominals. By the time he managed to force himself into 30 squats, his body felt as if it had turned into brittle glass. And by the time, by some incredible feat of fate, he completed the entire arbitrary routine, he collapsed on the floor, letting out a series of puffs of air. Come on, Midoriya. Are you really exhausted after that alone? Haruhi asked. All that physical exercise was already a pain on its own. But what made it worse for Midoriya was the way Haruhi somehow went through it all without sweating a drop. It's as if you were a machine of perpetual motion or something like that, Midoriya said between breaths of air. Hey, even I have my limits. It just takes me much longer than you to reach them apparently. Don't you feel at least some shame that a girl will surpass you so much? I'm sure that this agonizing pain, it surpasses that. A pretty convenient excuse, if you ask me. Haruhi knelt beside Midoriya, who was still lying motionless on the grass. Still, it's very strange that you collapsed so easily. Feeling exhausted is one thing, but you should be able to stand at least. Was it that you didn't exercise or something? Say, it's not that I don't exercise. While Midoriya certainly invested more in her brain than her muscles, it wasn't like she didn't do anything to stay fit either. He wasn't the type of person who skipped P class, and whenever he went to the countryside to visit his cousins during the summer, he would join them on their walks in the woods. He wanted to be proud of at least that, but as soon as he tried, he remembered that he always ended up being the laggard in everything during P classes and still got exhausted, and that his cousins always had to slow down their collective pace by half so that he wouldn't be left behind. Midoriya, I want you to be totally honest with me. Before I appeared in your life, what, exactly, was your plan to become a hero? Midoriya could not say anything. Unfortunately, it was not for lack of effort. At the peak that the question hit his ears, he shook his brain to try to get an answer, but nothing came to mind. Even though he didn't have a quirk, even though Bakugo was always telling him that he couldn't be a hero, he never gave up on that dream. But now that Haruhi brought it up, he had never done anything in pursuit of that goal. At the very least, he could have tried to stay fit or learn how to punch, but it never occurred to him to do any of that. I'm an idiot, Midoriya said. I keep talking about how I want to be a hero, but I never did anything to make it happen, even though I'm always 10 steps behind everyone else. What, did I think I could get into the UA in fits and starts or something? What about me? I don't know if something is wrong with you per se, but if you ask me, the only thing you lack is the right motivation. Saying you want to change can be a walk in the park, but making the effort to achieve it is a completely different story, especially when you're doing it alone. Lucky for you, you found a very good co-author, one who won't be afraid to poke you with a pen if you start slacking off. I hope I don't have to keep reminding you, but we're both in this together, you know? Haruhi was smiling at him again. From below where Midoriya stood, the sun and the girl's smile seemed to be one. I understand. Midoriya suddenly felt renewed with energy and rose from the ground. Without saying a word to Haruhi, he began the last phase of his training, though he thought he heard laughter and footsteps behind him. Haruhi might not be a perpetual motion machine, but with her behind him, Midoriya felt that he could become one with ease. 2 seconds after completing his first kilometer of running, Midoriya collapsed to the ground. At some point, Midoriya awoke to find a vision of a ceiling she didn't recognize. When he sat up, he saw that a pack of ice fell out of his forehead and a colorful blanket covered his body. With each passing second, it became abundantly clear that he was no longer in the park. But he had to find out where he was, and, more importantly, where Haruhi was. With an overview of the area, Midoriya saw that he was in what appeared to be a living room. And it was then that he realized that he was lying on a sofa. The color of the walls and carpet was moderately pleasing to the eye, and the condition of the plasma screen television, foreign oil paintings, and various other ornaments including the aforementioned sofa suggested a reasonable fortune on the part of the owner. At least it was nice to know that money wasn't an issue for his would-be kidnappers. Oh, you've woken up. Another hour, and I would have started to worry. The person who spoke to Midoriya was a slender-figured adult woman with long dark hair who entered the room with almost no noise in her heels. Something about the woman seemed familiar, but he couldn't identify it, even with the time he spent staring at her face. Midoriya was always good at making eye contact with people, but he found it particularly easy to do so with her because he felt so uncomfortable looking at her body, because she was dressed as a Playboy bunny for some reason. Did they bring me to Homeby Hills? Midoriya thought. Wait, you're red. Did I speak too soon? Asked the woman. Oh no, it's obviously the bunny costume. Children approaching puberty are always so adorable. Be careful there, darling. For things like this, they put you on certain lists. A new person decided to join whatever was going on. This person was a brown-haired man with an emotionless expression. Like the bunny, something on her face was familiar. And the reason for coming to such a realization was that he was too nervous to look at the pink apron with the words "Rape the Chef" written on it. "DDD, where am I?" Midoriya asked, her body trembling like a leaf. "Calm down. You're in good hands." "Probably," said the man in the apron. Midoriya began to tremble even more. "Why do you say probably?" asked the bunny. "I can't see the future. Who says something terrible won't happen to him? Hey, I was looking for some good nurse costume to wear. But the pink still has that curry stain from Nodoka's birthday party. And the only white I can find is the one from my Yu-Gi-Oh cosplay. Any idea where?" "Midoriya, you are alive." To make things even more confusing, the third person to enter the scene was Haruhi's familiar face, whose hair was no longer in a ponytail, but completely loose again. Midoriya found it quite disappointing for some reason. "Suzumiya-san, what's going on? Where are we? Why are we in such a weird place with weird people? What? Oh, what did you two say to him?" "Nothing that requires censorship, at least," said the bunny. "That's not the only filter you have to go through, you know." "We will agree not to agree," said the man in the apron. Haruhi swelled her cheeks the same way she did before. Whatever time had passed, it soon became quite obvious where he was, and who these people were in relation to Haruhi. "Suzumiya-san, are these your parents?" "Yes, for better or for worse," Haruhi said. By that confirmed, that meant that he was in Haruhi's house. After seeing it well, he had to admit that he thought it was a beautiful place. Nice to meet you both. Gee, thank you for admitting me into your home." Midoriya stood up and began to give a series of quick bows. "There's no need to be so formal. We are happy to finally have the opportunity to meet the famous Izuku Midoriya. Our daughter talks a lot about you, after all," said the man in the apron. "Shut up, Dad," Haruhi spat. "Anyway, if we are introducing ourselves, I am Sakura Suzumiya, father of a girl, loyal housewife, and fantastic lover of my san. It is not a time or place," said the bunny, tapping Sakura's forehead. "I'm Haruhi's mother, my Suzumiya. I'm an actress, so you probably know me by my maiden name, Tadamichi." "Tada. Oh wow, you are my Tadamichi. I thought he only looked familiar to me because he shares facial features with Suzumiya-san. But you have to be living under the rocks to not know who my Tadamichi is. Every show you star in boosts the ratings every week it airs. Every movie you appear in is #1 at the box office on opening weekend. And every Twitter fight you participate in always ends in your complete victory. You're really good at talking," Sakura said. "Even that costume she's wearing now must be from her new show, Lappy's Lagomorph, the 5th dimensional bunny. Tell me, the bunny costume is to highlight Lappy's conflict to find a balance between her new life on Earth and the memories of her home world, right?" "No, the director simply wanted to show a woman in a bunny costume," Mai said. "Which, of course, makes it the best show in the world," Sakura said. It's not that I see it just for that, so. Wait, how did we end up talking about this? And what am I doing here anyway?" Midoriya asked. "Well, after we barely ran a little, you collapsed like a sack of potatoes, so I brought you to my house and called my parents to help us. How good that we were doing our training in my neighborhood, or it would have been torture to try to get you on the train," Haruhi said. "They brought a doctor, and he told us that you just fainted from exhaustion and that you'd be fine resting in a bed, so we didn't have to take you to a hospital." Oh, that's good. Then don't let our daughter's tone fool you. When he called us, she was in tears, saying how we had to move heaven and earth, and also hell while we were at it, to save her dear friend's life," Sakura said. "I wasn't crying. Look at my face. I definitely have one or both dry eyes," Haruhi said. "I find that hard to believe. After all, the sound of my adorable baby shedding tears is the only thing that can compel me to leave my work early," Mai said. "Mum, that reminds me, I need to change this." Mai gave a quick bow and left the room, while Haruhi glared at her the whole time. Midoriya, you'd better ignore everything those two have said about me. Do you understand? It's a complete lie, so there's no point in you listening to them. Moreover, even if he was crying, and he wasn't, it would have been totally justified. Can you imagine the bad press I would have if my partner died on our first day of training together? There's no way I would want to deal with something so annoying, so rather, you should be the one to apologize for almost making it my reality. And I don't know what you're trying to tell me, but if you put an end to all this, then I'm sorry. Midoriya said. Next time, don't put so much pressure on yourself again, just because you got caught up in my daughter's charismatic stupidity. Sakura said. The training you are doing is fine, but remember to take food and water with you. There's no need to do it all in one trip, so if you're feeling tired, take a break. In the end, everything will balance out. Yes, I guess that would be the best way to handle it. Haruhi said. That's my girl. Something about that scene was very strange to Midoriya. Fortunately, it only took him a second to discover what it was. Suzu. No, Saku. Wait, that too. Sakura is fine. Unless, of course, you think you're man enough to call my daughter by her first name. Sakura-san. Midoriya said without hesitation. Haruhi seemed to roll his eyes at it, but he chose to ignore it. You mean you don't mind Suzumiya-san trying to make us heroes? Even if we don't have quirks? Yes, I guess. My san and I aren't taking it lightly. Sakura scratched his chest for a second. But I don't see why they can't do it. It's not like having a quirk automatically makes it a secure job, after all. Either way, since Haruhi is Haruhi, that should make up for it. And since the two of you are going to spend a lot of time together, you'll probably catch her. Oh, of course, I'm definitely going to infect him. This is going to be a long time after all, Haruhi said. Again he gave him that same smile that he liked to give him. The one that said, if you stay quiet and follow me without complaining, everything will be fine. To be honest, Midoriya had no reason to believe that wasn't the truth. So, Dad says that since one of us was unconscious, that automatically ends the training for today. As it should be, Sakura said. So he'll take you home, but as you happen to wake up around noon, we can take advantage of the hour to invite you to lunch with me, with us, before you go home. Why, yes, it's okay, Midoriya said. It better be. Ah, how nostalgic, Sakura said with a big smile. No, it's not, Haruhi said. Midoriya didn't understand what he wanted to get to with that. I don't know if you have the authority to decide that when the only thing that makes you nostalgic is baby food. If you want, we can eat that for lunch, Mai said, returning to the living room in normal and elegant clothes. That's not what I meant. Oh, Suzumi Tadamichi-san. He forgot to take off his ears. Midoriya said. No, I didn't. These are real. Do you want to touch them? Mai asked, lightly shaking the rabbit ears that were apparently real. Oh, so he can touch them. But I can't, Sakura asked. Yes, because there is a difference between touching and groping. I prefer to call it caressing. Start petting something else. Don't worry, I will. Let's go to eat, okay? Haruhi said. He then grabbed Midoriya by the wrist and pulled him inside the kitchen, so Midoriya couldn't help but smile. After all, even if Haruhi thought her parents were the most embarrassing people on the planet, they at least supported her. After a lunch consisting of ham and mineral water sandwiches, Sakura and Mai took Midoriya back to their apartment, and Haruhi accompanied them to fulfill his promise to play with Midoriya's younger sister. Sakura had some assignments to attend to, and Mai had to shoot a commercial, so they couldn't stay to meet in Ko, but they told Midoriya to greet her on her behalf. Sakura also gave Midoriya a list of protein supplements he could take to increase his performance before he and Mai went about their business. I've arrived, Midoriya said as he and Haruhi entered the apartment. Inko was sitting by the kitchen table, still with the confused look she had on her face in the morning. "Hello, Deku-kun." "Hello, Haruhi. Let's play," said the little sister, coming to them by surprise like a wrecking ball. "Of course, little one," Haruhi said. "Midoriya, when we're done playing, let's try to alter our plans a bit to reduce the risk of you dying." That probably must have been a factor from the beginning, Midoriya thought. And also, come to think of it, we should find a martial arts instructor. Someone to teach us something like wrestling, aikido, and maybe some bartitsu. While we're at it. Midoriya didn't think they would have to face Moriarty in the near future, but he kept it to himself. Haruhi went after her little sister as she scampered to her room. But before Midoriya could follow them with comparatively less enthusiasm, her mother asked her to sit down. "Is something wrong, Mom?" Midoriya asked. "And no, it's okay. It's just." Inko looked down at the table for a second before taking a deep breath. "Izuku, forgive me." "Forgive you for why?" "Forgive me for doing nothing but asking you for forgiveness all these years ago. I mean, all of these. Oh. Now it all made sense. You had just lost your dream before you had a chance to live it. And instead of helping you feel better, all I did was try to get away from it. You never stopped trying, and every time I heard you say that you still wanted to be a hero, all I did was regret that I didn't tell you what you wanted to hear. I'm sorry, Izuku. Really, I'm very sorry." "Mom, please, enough. You don't have to apologize. It's not your fault that I was born like this," was what Midoriya wanted to tell him. But he managed to stop. She didn't need to hear that, and he didn't have to say it either. "Why are you telling me now, after so long?" By Haruhi. Naturally. When she said that the two of you were going to try to become heroes despite not having quirks. I was happy to see that you had a friend who wanted to support you and be by your side. But at the same time, I felt very sad to see that a girl was offering you the support that as a mother, I never tried to provide to you. And I don't want to go on like this anymore. I want you to know here, and now that I'm going to support you every step of the way. Mom, I thank you." In the presence of those words that he waited for 6 years to hear, that was all Midoriya could say. His tears spoke for him all the rest. Midoriya, check this out." And cutting the tension from everything that had just happened, Haruhi appeared. Midoriya did not protest. With how serious her mother had become, she could use some humor. But that feeling vanished the instant she saw Haruhi hit her younger sister in the head with a baseball bat. "But what do you do?" Midoriya shouted. "It's fun," Haruhi shouted, hitting her again. "I thought you were exaggerating, but she really doesn't feel anything. This is so much fun. I am invincible," said her little sister. Haruhi hit her on the head for the third time, and as soon as she landed the punch, her body began to radiate a bright green light. 20 minutes later, Inko had to take Midoriya, her little sister, and Haruhi to the department store to buy a new table to replace the one that had just exploded. And that's how my first day of training with Haruhi ended. Not with tired whimpers, but with a big bang. Though I doubt Haruhi would have liked it to end any other way, of course. We didn't really do much. Although if you think that fainting from exhaustion made it all a total failure, you're wrong. I got to meet Haruhi's parents. I got to see Haruhi in a ponytail. And best of all, I could feel the full strength of my mom's support and unconditional love. I would like to see someone say that all that does not make him a great winner. After passing out on the first day of our training, Haruhi and I worked together to improve her quote-unquote master plan. Since they were really basic exercises, there wasn't that much we had to do. So we simply took to heart his father's advice and decided to rest between activities. Haruhi wanted the breaks to be only 1 minute, but I managed to get her to use logic and accept that they were at least 5 minutes. Obviously, taking a few breaks didn't turn all that training into a simple walk in the park, but at least it became something that was manageable. The supplements that Haruhi's father suggested I take also helped me a lot. I could feel my resistance increasing, and before I knew it, I was able to follow the entire program without even feeling like I was going to collapse. Of course, even with that, he was never able to keep up with Haruhi. She always says she's never done serious exercise until now. But that has to be a lie. And for the sake of my pride, I hope it's a simple lie. Anyway, the training was going quite well. Or at least, well enough for me. Haruhi, however, made his dissatisfaction with the world very apparent, and it existed because of a reason to which he clung very tightly. We need a martial arts master, Haruhi said on a June afternoon. You've been telling me that at least once a day for a month and a half, Midoriya said as she passed her lunch. Because it's important. No matter how strong we get from our training, it won't mean anything if we can't pull off a good punch. And you can't learn much on the internet or in the library. That's why we need someone to teach us how to do it. I know. But it's not that we haven't found someone for lack of effort, but rather because we didn't find anyone who meets your crazy standards. My standards aren't crazy, Haruhi said. Midoriya dropped her chopsticks and gave him her full attention. Suzumiya-san, when we went to Gunhead's martial arts studio, you got so frustrated that you called him a weird talking clumsy guy and got us kicked out. I have every right to have been angry with him. He was only teaching us how to make keys, but you don't save yourself from everything with just grabs. Heroes are supposed to do much more than that. They are more balanced. And how about that other place where we met the girl with the giant-handed quirk? We could have learned good karate and kung fu, but you kept complaining about how boring it was. Because it was so boring. Knowing only karate and kung fu is already very repetitive, and I refuse to fall into that cliché. Besides, I didn't like that girl's hair. It was just a ponytail. There was nothing wrong with it. Without warning, Haruhi grabbed Midoriya's bento and gobbled down the rest of his lunch in his mouth. Well, I don't think I will eat anymore. Look, Midoriya, all those places we went to were of no use to us, because they were very simple, of a single note. If we want to become heroes without Quirk, we won't get anything out of it until we learn 10 million techniques. And after that, what? Are we going to go to Spain to look for someone with a power level of 10 million? Midoriya thought. Don't see me like that. Do you think we'll be able to shut up guys like Bakugo if we just do what anyone can do? Haruhi forced Midoriya to turn his head to the left, which happened to be the direction where Bakugo was at the time. Bakugo may have been picking on him less since he had his fight with Haruhi, but their relationship could hardly be called cordial. So it wasn't a surprise that the blonde gave Midoriya a murderous look until he turned again. And what are you looking for, then? Someone who can show us all that the world has to offer. Someone to throw precautions out the window and throw all the crazy books at us until we're the best of the best of the best. If we can't find a teacher who is like that, there's no point in giving anyone the benefit of the doubt. Midoriya, any sense at all? At that moment, lunchtime was over and the bell rang to start the next class. Midoriya breathed a sigh of relief, as that meant that she would have to strain herself to continue the conversation. Although trying to think outside the box to learn how to fight wasn't a bad idea, his standards were too high to do anything other than impede progress. He, better than anyone in the world, understood how Haruhi felt, but they wouldn't get anywhere if they had to keep moving according to his sudden whims. After all, just because Haruhi wanted something, it didn't mean that she was going to get it. Once school was over, Haruhi dragged Midoriya to the park so they could do their training for the day. As soon as they concluded, Midoriya returned to her apartment and let her aching body collapse on her bed. It took him barely half an hour to stop feeling exhausted. A new record. From there, Midoriya went about her routine, doing homework, having dinner, playing with her sister. The usual, all the while thinking about what might happen if Haruhi's desire for a master martial arts scholar. Haruhi might be just a child, but she had the ferocity of a grown adult. So there was no way of knowing what would happen if she reached her limits. Such thoughts stayed with Midoriya, even as she bathed in the night, and were only interrupted by something equally confusing. Hey, get out of here! Specifically, his little sister who burst into the bathroom without warning. But Deku-kun, your phone was ringing. I answered it, and it's someone who wants to talk to you. And it's a girl, said his little sister, laughing like a demented clown. I'm still in the bathroom. And who gives you the right to answer my phone? Midoriya exclaimed, and she simply shrugged. Anyway, here you go. Midoriya's little sister threw the phone at him. Even though it almost got out of hand, Midoriya managed to catch him and avoid being electrocuted. Naturally, her little sister had already run away before she had a chance to scold her properly. Always doing what he wants. I'm not surprised Kaken likes it so much. And who calls me so late? Anyway, Haruhi. Aunt Rika? The caller ID said, unknown number. Midoriya hoped her little sister hadn't interrupted her bath just to talk to a telemarketer. Hello? Hello? Repeated the other person like a parrot. She was indeed a girl. Although if Midoriya had to guess, it sounded more like she was a young woman. Who's talking? This is me. Y-O. I. That was hardly an answer. Oh, you're in the bathroom now? Sorry for that. Do you want me to call you later? And no, it's okay. May I know who is speaking, please? And what would be fun in that? I'm sure you'll know one of these days, but it doesn't have to be today. What? What do you mean? What is he calling me for? If I'm honest, I just wanted to hear the voice of the guy with the inspiring dream. And that's it. What? Midoriya almost dropped the phone into the water. He only had a single dream, and not only were there very few people who believed it was inspiring, but what all those people had in common was that Midoriya knew them. There was no cause, motive, reason, or circumstance for a strange woman to comment on it in any way. We'll probably know each other in the future, so thank you in advance for playing along. I hope we get along so well that we can finish each other's sandwiches. Goodbye. Wait a minute. The line was cut. It seemed that aside from being mysterious and sinister, the woman who had just spoken to him was also incredibly rude. The proverbial cherry on top of the proverbial cake, as if it were. What am I supposed to do with this? Midoriya wondered. I don't have a registered number, so I can't track this woman. If I tell my mom, she'll start to worry. And if I tell Suzumiya-san, I don't even want to think about what I could do. With that in mind, Midoriya chose to keep that conversation to himself. I really hoped that she wouldn't come back later to haunt him. The rest of the week continued as it normally would. Haruhi kept nagging Midoriya about how they had to find a martial arts master, and Midoriya kept nodding simply, for there was little else she could do. The only thing that made him different was that he still had the mysterious phone call engraved in his head. He still had no idea who that person was, and since he had only said that they would meet in the future, that meant that he could appear at any time. Once that thought came to him, Midoriya couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that there were people hidden in the shadows watching his every move. He wanted to say something, but he knew he couldn't tell anyone about something that could have been a simple prank call and then spiraled out of control, so he had no choice but to grit his teeth and endure it. Eventually, the weekend came, and with 2 days off from school, Haruhi showed up at Midoriya's doorstep early Saturday morning to drag him to the park for training. You're hiding something, aren't you? Haruhi said as they boarded the train. Sorry, Midoriya asked. These last few days you've been acting very strange, and I'm tired of it. You'd better tell me what's wrong with you, or I'll put you to work so hard today that your bones will be shattered. And how would that be different from any other day? Yes, just confess at once. The tone of the voice made it very clear that Haruhi was ready to make that overly literal statement. It's just, Kaken has been picking on me again, and that's a little bad for me lately. That's all. Are you serious? Why didn't you tell me before? If you had come to me from the beginning, I would gladly have hit that jerk all over the face. That's more or less why I didn't do it. Well, the next time I do something to you, come straight with me. Hell, come see me when you have any problems, and I'll blow it into oblivion. You know I'm that kind of girl, don't you? Yes, I know. Midoriya would have time to feel bad for throwing Bakugo under the bus later. By now, he was too busy feeling bad for lying to such a strong person. The training turned out as well as usual and lasted as long as it always did. At the end of the 10-kilometer race divided into small parts, so that Midoriya wouldn't risk dying, Midoriya and Haruhi sat down to eat something. Though most of the time what they did was talk about how they needed a martial arts master. She didn't stay as into it as the other days, though, probably because their conversation on the train drew her attention to wanting to beat Bakugo up. Midoriya didn't quite agree with that, but he knew it was best not to comment on it. The two of them didn't have many goodies, so they ran out pretty quickly. It was almost lunchtime, so the plan was to go back to Haruhi's house so that her father could make them something to eat. This plan was interrupted by a kunai that was thrown into a tree, missing Midoriya's head by just a few centimeters. "What?" was all Midoriya managed to say as she jumped away from the tree. "What the hell? Is a ninja attacking us? Show yourself," Haruhi shouted, holding his bottle of Mirko's mineral water like a dagger. Midoriya chose not to point out that a ninja wouldn't show up if they tried to assassinate someone, but that wouldn't help them in any way. However, there was no sign of anyone attacking them in the immediate area, meaning that the assailant was hiding somewhere, or had a quirk that allowed them to attack from a distance. Who cares? We have to get out of here. If someone is trying to attack us, we need to get out of here as quickly as possible. No, wait. We have to alert the other people in the park first. But what if that spreads panic and makes this person do something crazy? If that happens then, hey, look at this. There's a note attached to this thing. By the time Midoriya turned around, Haruhi had removed a paper scroll from the end of the kunai. "Izuku Midoriya and Haruhi Suzumiya, I humbly request that you look for me at the opposite end of the park from your current location in 10 minutes, so that our destinies can cross properly. Come alone if you know what is good for you. P.S. The last part is not to threaten them. It's just to get them to think about what would be best for their development. But seriously, it's better for them to come alone." Oh my god. I know, right? It's a real challenge card. Someone is looking for us for a declaration of war. Where did you get that idea? And why do you sound happy about that? Midoriya thought. This is unbelievable. To think that someone recognizes our talents at an early stage of our careers. Well, let's not keep him waiting. Suzumiya-san, we can't go see that person. What we should do is call the police. We can't do that. Even if the note didn't specifically say to go alone, we have to be there in 10 minutes before he leaves. I don't want to go see a person who almost opened a sixth hole in my head. Hey, if I really wanted to do that, you would already have it. Haruhi's pointing out didn't do any good to make him feel better. Besides, I don't think this person wants to hurt us. Well, he could have fooled me. I'm serious, Midoriya. I can't explain it. But when I read that note, I had a hunch that whoever wrote it has no ill intentions toward us. I know it sounds strange, but that's what went through my head, and I'll hold on to it. Haruhi's words along with his face showed no less conviction than on any other occasion. It was hard not to find all that intoxicating. But what if you make a mistake? As I said before, when you have a problem, I'll send it flying into oblivion. The way Haruhi smiled made Midoriya believe that this wasn't hyperbole. With only a few reservations he couldn't shake off, Midoriya and Haruhi headed to the opposite end of the park from where they stood. Neither of them was completely sure what they meant, so they simply headed northeast of their location and waited for everything to work out. Even though the park was quite large in itself, even though the two had just finished a very heavy workout, they reached the part where the fence surrounded the northwest end of the park in a few minutes. Midoriya was happy to see that his training was really paying off. But now it was hardly time to be excited about something like that. Very well. It was only 8 minutes since you read the note. Where is that person? Midoriya asked. Don't worry. I know it's coming. He's not the kind of person who would make a big fuss about something and then not follow through, Haruhi said. You undoubtedly have many opinions about someone you have never met. It's called optimism, Midoriya. He had his doubts about that. Yes, and I thank you very much for that, shouted a female voice that did not belong to either of them. That must be the mysterious person who wanted to talk to them. And yet he hadn't revealed his presence. Before we go any further, do you think you could at least apologize for almost piercing my brains a little while ago? Midoriya asked. Hey, if I really wanted to do that, it would have happened by now, he told him. And Haruhi's, I told you so, look would hardly be justified. Anyway, stop hiding yourself as a coward. You were the one who challenged us to a fight, so get out there and let us give it to you, Haruhi said. A fight? Oh, non. Here we are not going to fight fists with anyone, my little ones. Not if I can help it. Either way. And why did you call us then? Who are you anyway? Who am I? You ask who am I? I am the terror that flutters in the night. I am the corset that enhances the bust of justice. An explosion of smoke appeared in the top of one of the trees. I'm Lakajmusha. Whoa. The mysterious woman appeared in the middle of the smoke, quickly lost her balance, and fell on her face on the ground. Is S okay? Midoriya asked. Yes, only. Ouch. Right above my keys. But yes, I am Lakajmusha. Nice to meet them. The mysterious woman, apparently named Kagemusha, got up from the ground, and Midoriya was finally able to give her a good look. She was a rather tall woman who looked to be in her late 20s and early 30s, with a full head of curly brown hair adorned with a smiley face bra, and a helmet adorned with white fur of the kind Take to Shinjin would wear. Her body was sculpted like that of a supermodel, large breasts, narrow waist, toned abdomen, thick and healthy thighs, all that, and was covered in sirashi, with chaps in the colors of the United States flag, and a jacket worn by cheerleaders in schools over her shoulders as a cape. Maybe there were more, but Midoriya didn't have the courage to look at her for more than a few seconds. Well, someone here is not shy at all, huh? Haruhi asked. And well, Kagemusha. No, I'm La Kagemusha. That's what I said. Kagemusha, Midoriya said. No, my name is La Kagemusha. It's like a tribe called Quest. You have to say it in full. And can't we just say Kagemusha for short? Kagemusha puffed up her cheeks and began to stomp like a little girl. No, you idiot. I tell you that my name is La Kagemusha. The Cage Musha. The Kagemusha. As soon as Haruhi said that, La Kagemusha calmed down and looked at Haruhi with innocent eyes. If you're not here to fight us, what did you want us for? And how do you know us? Anyway, let me explain, children. To begin with, I am one of the people in this world who has made the effort necessary to become a hero. Are you? Midoriya asked. It's understandable if you haven't heard from me. I tend to do my job keeping a low profile, so I'm really almost never in the spotlight. I think that explains why even a fanboy of heroes like Midoriya didn't recognize you at first glance. Haruhi said. That was a good excuse, if perhaps a little convenient. Even so, Midoriya quickly discovered that, to her great surprise, she did feel some familiarity with La Kagemusha. Maybe you saw it once on TV or read a story about it surfing the web at some point. I couldn't remember it exactly. At least, his voice sounded strangely familiar. So there I was, doing my morning patrol through this neighborhood, when I came across two little kids who would be you exercising more than you would expect from someone their age. I was curious and decided to watch them as they did so. And that's how I learned that the two of you were a pair of kids without a quirk, trying to be heroes. At first I thought it was something stupid. Of course, Midoriya thought. But after spending a few days watching them, I couldn't help but be touched by how committed they were to their goal. There was something really romantic about it, all that made my heart start flying. Wow, thank you very much. That's exactly what we wanted to do, Haruhi said. Midoriya wondered where he was when Haruhi decided on that aspect of his training. However, after so many weeks of observing them while they did so, I knew that I could no longer limit myself to being an observer. No, I needed to get directly involved with their process. I had to. The Kagemusha pointed to the sky and posed dramatically. I've decided I'm going to become your martial arts teacher. Wow, that's great. No, it's not. We need something straightforward first, Midoriya said. You are right. What do you plan to teach us, Kagemusha? If you only have a martial art under your belt, you can forget about it. That's not what I meant, Midoriya thought. Please, it's already very boring to be so monotonous. No, I'm the kind of woman who throws cautions out the window and will throw all the crazy books at them until they're the best of the best of the best. I'm going to teach you everything there is to know under the sun, starting with things like wrestling, aikido, and while I'm at it, maybe even a little bit of bartitsu. All of that and much more will be available to you the second we start working together. Haruhi's eyes looked like they literally had stars in them. For her part, Midoriya couldn't believe that she was meeting someone who was in total harmony with Haruhi, especially for an adult woman. You, miss. The Kagemusha. Not that it's not a tempting offer, but I don't think we can accept this deal just like that. Oh, I get it. They doubt my abilities and want to really see how strong I am. That's not what... Well thought out, Midoriya. It is not enough to say that she is a martial arts scholar. He has to prove it to us, Haruhi said. That's not what. Then come for me. If either of you is able to land a single punch on me, then I won't be able to teach them anything, and I'll make sure to leave them alone, said Kagemusha. That's not why. Before Midoriya could finish, Haruhi was already charging at Kagemusha, screaming at the top of his lungs like a Viking warrior darting into battle. He tried to hit Kagemusha with his bottle of Mirko water, but Kagemusha bent his body to an impossible angle to dodge her, caught Haruhi with his legs, and threw her at Midoriya, causing the two to collapse full of scrapes and bumps. Your turn, Midoriya, said Kagemusha. For obvious reasons, I choose not to, Midoriya said. What the hell, Midoriya? You have to avenge me, Haruhi said, shaking himself off him. Revenge yourself. No. Ha 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 ha. Now they're more than convinced of my amazing strength, right? Truth? Asked Kagemusha. I'm sure they are, but as much as I'd like you to commit to coming with me, I have one last show of force I want to give you before you sign on the dotted line. But we can't do it here, so join me, okay? I agree. At that point, Midoriya had decided to give up protesting and allowed himself to fall into the same flow as Haruhi and Kagemusha, wherever it took him. The Kagemusha guided Midoriya and Haruhi out of the park and back to Koyon Station, the three of them boarding the first train to arrive. All the way to the station and during the train ride, no one who was passed near even glanced at Kagemusha. The fact that an older woman could walk around in such provocative attire and without drawing attention to herself had to be proof that she was a hero. The three of them spent 5 full stops on the train. Midoriya did not recognize the city where they were, but Haruhi said he remembered reading that it was a wealthy neighborhood that was under a branch of the Yamaguchi-gumi. Midoriya's heart might have gone from knowing that second piece of information. The Kagemusha spent about 30 minutes directing them out of the main part of the city and to the foot of the mountains. There was a wooden sign engraved with the image of a crane fishing for a dragon from the heavens. The mountain clearly belonged to someone, but in case it wasn't clear enough, there was a sign that directly denoted that it was private property. Naturally, Haruhi and Kagemusha ignored that and went into the grounds of a family who hadn't bothered to put up a fence around their property and probably cared very little about the invaders. Midoriya really wanted to point out how bad he was with it. But Haruhi had already grabbed him by the hand and made him an accomplice to his crime. "All right, this looks excellent," said Lakejmusha after spending 20 minutes walking along a seemingly undefined path. "Great for what? What are we doing here?" Midoriya asked. "You two won't do anything. I, on the other hand, am going to show you the pinnacle of my power. Power that, with some luck, you will be ready to obtain by the time you are ready to go to the UA." The Kagemusha observed the area for a while before running off near a huge rock that was a few meters away from them. "And before you think of it, I don't have a quirk that increases my strength in any way." The Kagemusha adopted a posture that resembled a boxer's guard, but she kept one arm close to her chest and the other stretched out in front of her. He took a deep breath and struck a punch at the rock that was too fast for Midoriya to keep up with him completely. The end result, the rock shattered after a single blow, was fully visible, however. In an instant, Midoriya found himself too astonished by Lakejmusha to feel as suspicious as he should have been. "That was amazing. Absolutely, positively amazing," Haruhi said. "Do I assume that means I passed the interview?" "With honors, Lakejmusha. Are you saying that we can do that someday?" Midoriya asks. "Definitely," said Lakejmusha. Sir Roland from Matter of France wielded the Durandal sword, an indestructible blade capable of destroying giant rocks with a single blow. "When I'm done with you, you'll become an unbreakable pair of Durandals. How does that sound to you?" "Great, right?" Haruhi was already nodding her head. And if Midoriya wanted to be honest, she wanted to do that too. "Could you at least tell us your name? Your real name? If we're going to work together, at least I think we deserve to know that about you." "I dare to disagree, but you are in charge. I still prefer to be called Lakejmusha, but my real name is Yasumi Watahashi. If you decide to use it, don't forget that it is pronounced as it is written in katakana." "Understood," Haruhi said. Midoriya was not surprised that it was Haruhi who made sense of it, and preferred not to comment on it. "If I'm perfectly honest, I never believed we'd find someone to teach us martial arts. By Haruhi's crazy standards, it should have been impossible to find anyone remotely compatible with her. Apparently, it's impossible for me to be right about anything, since completely out of nowhere, Yasumi Watahashi, Lakejmusha fell from the sky and ticked every single box on Haruhi's crazy list. Of course, I was exhausted to the point that I couldn't complain afterwards. But it's still crazy that something like that really happened. It is at times like this that they serve as a good citation to the idea that the world revolved around Haruhi.